It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. We made it to a Friday. Woohoo! And the audio cuts just keep on coming.
Yeah.
We haven't played Mark Halperin in a while in his podcast with Sean Spicer.
Oh, yeah.
And
right.
Dan Turrentine, two out of the three Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this was, I think, yesterday. And they were asking, Mark Halperin was asking, basically, what's the worst take of the media in the last 24 hours? And this is actually fascinating. He calls it the dominant media.
Okay. All right. Well,
Interesting. We could have an interesting conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it anymore?
Right. I don't think so, but
No. But it's quite funny, and they're talking about what happened on, I think it was CBS yesterday. All right, here we go.
Okay.
CBS Morning Show.
All right, here we go. You get a paragraph on this one. Sean, what's the worst moment the media's had in the last 24 hours?
It was about 10 seconds ago.
Yes,
Tony Gill of
teeing you up.
CBS. Thank you. I appreciate this. Tom Cotton, I don't think I've watched CBS mornings ever, but I saw that Tom Cotton was on there. He was talking about China. I love Tom Cotton, and I love talking about China. So I watched the interview. Tom Cotton is talking like he is a huge champion of the existential threat that China poses to the United States. And the first thing that Tony Dopical of CBS says is, well, let's be honest. China and the United States both want to dominate the world. What's the difference? And I'm like, wait a second. We don't want to dominate the world. China actually does. And then the second thing he said is he goes on in the interview to say, well, let's face it. You talk about the military, the economic thing. The one thing that we haven't talked about that we're facing is DEI. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I don't think there's a person in the world, no matter how leftist you are, that puts China, the economy, the military, and then says the number 3 issue the world is facing is DEI. That's insane. And again,
right,
just the downward spiral of CBS. It was literally, if you ask Chat GPT, how can CBS blow itself up in 72 hours? They would say, first put Margaret Brennan on, then follow it up.
Margaret Brennan on, then follow it up.
I love it.
And the interesting thing is you have Mark Halperin and Dan Turrentine both on there, both Democrats.
Yeah.
With the biggest smiles on their face, like, this is all insane.
No,
this is just nuts.
Well, and because you really can't, if you're being intellectually honest about it, you really can't. More and more, they don't get away with what they used to get away with. Now, we pointed out years ago that they were delusional, but they would get away with this delusional thought. And a question that's silly. Think about that. Oh, the U.S. is trying to dominate the world. China's trying to dominate the world. What's the difference? Well, as he points out, no, we're not trying to dominate the world. Number 2, it's equating the morality, if you think about it, of communism versus a society built on liberty, saying that essentially, the two are exactly the same. Nope. Well, if you don't know this, we asked this question earlier. Do they actually know it? Do they? People that ask these stupid questions, are they being intellectually honest? And by that I mean, are they putting on full display their lack of knowledge by asking such stupid questions? I don't know.
Well, I think it was Pamela Brown on CNN, and I forgot who was on. It was a congressman, and she was asking him about, well, you fired some people and you fired some people and then rehired them immediately, but they're in charge of nuclear secrets. He goes, nuclear secrets? He goes, are you kidding me? The person you had in charge of nuclear secrets was that transgender.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever the person, I forgot the person's name, was a transgender who was shoplifting.
Right.
That's who you had in charge of the nuclear secrets.
Right.
You didn't say a damn thing.
Right.
And she said, I'm not familiar with that incident at all.
Right, exactly.
I was like, wow.
I don't know what you're talking about.
She goes, I need to be transparent. I have no idea what you're talking about. And so the question that we asked with, especially with I've got to say it, with the young people,
Yeah.
and we have an audio cut coming up, but I consider this the audio cut of the week, and it's the explanation of the administration to the press about how the government runs. And you and I had this not actually a debate, just a discussion, saying maybe they really don't know. Maybe so many of these reporters, if they're in their 30s,
Yeah.
you know, if you're in your early 30s, that means you were born in the 90s.
Right.
And that's when we start talking about when education really started going downhill.
Right.
Do they even know how the government works?
Right.
Do they know anything about history? Do they know anything about China and communism? Have they really ever studied any of this? Or is the average reporter working for the networks actually more ignorant than the people that they are broadcasting to?
Yeah. Right.
And I'm not talking about, their bias, but you take ignorance with the leftist bias, and that's what you get.
Yeah. Right.
Complete cluelessness as to, how the government runs. And I don't know. I don't know anymore. I can't sit there and say these reporters absolutely know that they're lying. Some do.
Mm-hmm.
Are the other ones just completely brainwashed as being ignorant? Because if you can buy into the fact that a man can become a woman because a man says so, how ignorant are you in science?
Well, think about the years and years and generations of indoctrination. And it eventually was bound to produce a large group of ignorant people. Because what is indoctrination about? Is it about learning? No, it isn't. The people have the ability to learn, but if they're being indoctrinated fully and then being passed through the public school system and then on through liberal universities, it's inevitable. You're going to get at least some in that group that are ignorant, that don't know, that have no idea how the world works and aren't up to speed.
One of the people I've been noticing on CNN lately that's completely ignorant, seems to be totally clueless, is Breonna Keeler. We played this audio cut earlier, and I thought, let's play it again because it totally applies to complete and total either absolute stupidity, lying, or ignorance. Here we go.
In one of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s first moves as Secretary of Health and Human Services, the agency has released new guidance that gives a narrower definition of sex than the ones used by most scientists.
Most scientists?
What the hell is she talking about?
Are you kidding me? Wow.
Because she didn't even say gender.
No.
She might have if she was trying to have an off-ramp, well, I was talking gender, not sex. She's saying narrower definitions of sex.
Right.
That most scientists, when it comes to sex of a person, believes there's more than male and female. This is where, you and I follow the radical transgender movement from probably from the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the modern start, which probably was 20 years ago, but even going back further, going back to the late 60s, early 70s, where, it first started. And what it was, as we know, well, we're talking gender, not sex. Gender's different than sex. Gender's different. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember how it was pounded? Yeah. Stop it. Gender's different than sex. Gender's different than sex. And then one day you and I came in and it was like, sex and gender are the same. That's why a man should be able to play against a woman in sports.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people didn't get the talking points, and we're still throwing out just the gender argument. It's like, well, no, you can't make just a gender argument anymore because now you've said sex and gender are the same. That's why the man can play against a woman in sports, because the man is a biological woman if the man says so.
Yeah.
You're transphobic and you hate people.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
I win.
Yeah, exactly.
I win on that one.
Right.
But I mean, just how ignorant or stupid could you imagine? Now, I'm assuming they got producers and everything else. Okay, here's a story that you have. You've got to get on there and you've got to say that Trump, the HHS, and Robert Kennedy Jr., and we brought it up yesterday saying, yay, first thing from him, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
New guidance that narrows from whom? Narrows from whom?
Right.
Narrows a definition from whom? From many scientists. Who are these scientists?
Uh-huh. The definitions that most scientists use.
Right.
Well, hold on a second. We'll go back to the agenda from the Biden era, from the Obama era at the CDC and Health and Human Services, where they went in and started changing definitions. And, of course, everyone in the medical community had to comply with those CDC and HHS definitions because the mob would call you out if you didn't. You're violating somebody's rights if you don't use this language. So, do you mean that part? Now tell me what the medical community actually believes. Wow. Yeah, from the side that calls themselves the party of science.
Well, we had warned them a long time ago and then reiterated it when you had, one of the senators, who was the senator talking to the professor from Berkeley? Josh Hawley. Talking to the professor from Berkeley a couple of years ago. And we just said, wow, there it is right there. That's such a flawed argument. You can't win that one. And that's when he was asking, okay, what's the transgender thing about? Explain it to me. And she says, well, do you believe that a man can get pregnant? And Hawley says, well, no. She goes, well, then you're transphobic.
Yeah.
What do you mean I'm trans? What does this all mean? Well, we shouldn't be talking about this at all. What do you mean? Well, because if you talk about this, don't you understand that transgenders have the highest rate of suicide? And so basically you're enabling this. So the argument was, we go, listen to this argument. Listen to the argument that you're making. Somebody's asking, okay, you're a man and you say you're a woman. Well, what do you mean by that? Do you mean you feel like a woman? Or are you actually a woman? And then the response from that person is, well, do you believe that men can get pregnant? And you say no. Well, then you're an evil person. You're a bigoted person. You're a horrible person. No, I'm a scientific person. A man can't get pregnant.
Right.
Well, you can't say that. Why not? Because that's so offensive that this person is so sensitive, they may commit suicide because you hurt their feelings. Well, then there's a huge mental problem here. No, there's no mental problem here. Say you're a bigot again by calling it a mental problem. Well, you just told me that they've got such a higher rate of suicide that I should be concerned with, and your solution is that if they're young and have these problems, that let them cut off their body parts instead of committing suicide because there's no other option, like, for example, mental health guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, that's not an argument you can win.
You're ignoring the crisis.
Yeah.
In fact, you're ignoring it for the sake of not addressing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just insane.
I mean, it truly is. It is grotesque when you think about it that way, that you just brought up a massive mental health crisis.
Exactly.
And your answer to that is don't talk about it.
Right. Because we care.
Right. Which shows you absolutely don't.
I mean, it's just...
You can't possibly care because you don't want to address it.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's no critical thinking there. There's
Nope.
no connecting the dots.
No, there
It's
isn't.
pure brainwash.
Yeah.
Without any type, not even a 7-year-old critical thinking skill involved in that.
Right.
It's pure brainwashing.
Right.
And it's pure brainwashing because you know what the talking points are, but you won't hear the cross-examination of your talking points because you're not confident enough. You know you can't win it. That's I swear to you, I believe that's where all the rage comes from. I believe you've got a ton of people that are completely ignorant, that are brainwashed, that walk around life. They've been told something is true. They know they can't defend it. And I'm telling you, I've met so many people like this that can't explain their own feelings. And what's the reaction? Rage.
Yep. To shut the conversation
right.
down.
They can't handle the overload of anybody saying, well, let's cross-examine the way that you think.
Right. They can't. They cannot stand a cross-examination.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Available to producers or ag-oriented tax professionals. Various USDA and land-grant university resources to assist in tax preparation. For instance,
the USDA farmers.gov. So you go farmers.gov/taxes.
Clemson University Extension's Adam Kantrovich is among extension experts and tax professionals contributing to this site. Available resources include information about USDA programs that create taxable payments, filing advice, tax estimator tools, and videos.
We are hosting this webinar as part of our partnership with the National Farm Income Tax Extension Committee. FSA houses USDA's Farm Tax Education and Asset Protection Initiative. So we have monthly webinars on timely and relevant tax topics.
Sarah Campbell of the Farm Service Agency introducing a recent webinar recording on the topic of working with a tax preparer. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. Let's head to Larry in Detroit. Larry, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi.
Hi, Gary and Eric. I wanted to make a comment or run this situation by you guys to tell me what you think. What do you think about a way where certain people, well, anybody who's collecting Social Security could literally opt out of it in exchange for maybe a tax credit or something like that? Wouldn't that basically help maintain the continuation of the Social Security system?
A buyout, you mean? Well, the problem
not a buyout.
Not
a buyout. An opting out. Literally, they're not going to take it, and possibly what you would give them in exchange for not taking it would possibly be a tax credit.
Comes from the same place.
Yeah, I mean, it's either
the tax
or.
credit comes from the same place.
Yeah, it has
a
to
tax
be paid
credit
for.
is money the federal government's giving you.
Right. But I'm wondering just the idea. I mean, I don't really know so you're saying a tax credit would not really be solving the matter. So I'm not really, I'm just giving a suggestion. Is there a way, have you considered the fact that maybe people who really otherwise don't really need it, and it's not going to be they're not even going to realize they don't have it.
They could opt out. They could opt out now. You don't have to apply for Social Security.
No, I'm just okay. Well, that's what I'm wondering. What is your feeling? I mean,
no, you're not going to get
really probably.
No, you're
discussed.
not. No, you're not going to get. You're not going to get any significant number of people to give up an entitlement, which means they're entitled to get it because they specifically paid for it.
Right, they paid into it all their career.
The incentive just isn't there to do that.
Yeah. Thanks for the call.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know, it would be interesting to see if you could do if anybody would take a buyout. And what would the buyout be for somebody who's, turning 65? Let's say you've got a buy, because I did see something the other day online saying, well, anybody that has over $2 million in wealth shouldn't be able to collect Social Security. I saw that one the other day.
Right, yeah.
Like, well, you're going to get a lot of people saying, well, wait a minute. I own property that's worth that, but I don't have the cash assets.
Right.
And, if they've had a significant income, even if they have, stuff coming in from a 401k or whatever, if you're talking about, I don't know, $35,000, $40,000 a year, what would it be for you to say, I want a buyout at 65?
Right.
And remember, that would come out of today's Social Security. That would come out of today's government.
Mm-hmm.
So, long term, you may save, but what would the buyout be? What would I was starting to think, what would I accept if that was, if that was a situation that I was in? I'm going to retire, and Social Security comes to me and says, what would you take for a buyout? Or what buyout amount would be acceptable to me at 65, knowing that at 65, I mean, it's, probably when you get to that age, 65, or maybe you wait till 70, whatever. I mean, would 70 be the maximum age to collect Social Security? Would that be a bigger amount? It would have to be in order to entice you to do that. But at 70 years of age, most people start thinking, I'm going to start having medical problems. I need every asset I can get. I need every bit of cash I can get. I don't know what the future is going to bring.
Well,
and that's why it's tough. What would the buyout have to be if you were 65 or 62, 65, 60, or 70? Probably they'd say 62. I've also heard the 62's got to go.
Well,
I've heard that also.
And also the contingencies that you would have to build in beyond the agreement to take the buyout, right? So, in other words, the great risk would be, all right, someone takes the buyout, and then they go on a fabulous cruise and come home and don't have any money left. So now they're back on the government dole, right? They qualify because they don't have any money.
Right.
And so you got to take care of them. You can't not take care of them. Would there be a qualifier there to say that you would have to agree that you no longer qualify for this or that? Because then that would okay, well, but what does my state allow for, right? And it just gets into a real mess. This is, part of the problem.
Right.
It's hard to pay for more and more because we're not creating young people, babies.
It's like, well, when we start saying, well, the incentive isn't there, that's basic economics. People have put in something for their entire year. If they have a net worth of $3 million, it doesn't matter. I put in for that. I want the return on that. There isn't an incentive to just say, well, I can afford to do it. I'm going to, give it up. Mm-hmm. Some people may do that, but let's put it this way. You can voluntarily pay taxes to the federal government. How many people do that?
Right. Pay more than you owe.
You pay more. You can pay more than you owe. You are allowed to do that. How many people do that? And so, and that's basic economics. People aren't going to do that. They're not going to voluntarily give up their capital, and they're not going to voluntarily say, well, in order to save you may have a few.
Mm-hmm.
In order to save the country, I'm not going to take my Social Security because I don't need to do it. President Trump not taking a salary.
Right. Yeah. But it's a handful of people.
President Trump not taking a salary, which proves he's trying to enrich himself.
Exactly.
So interesting conversation. Mm-hmm. All right, let's play some audio here. I want to play this because this is a Democrat, Chris Cillizza. Before we get to our audio cut of the day, this isn't the audio cut of the day. I just want to make sure we got this in. Chris Cillizza, Democrat, worked for the Washington Post, and liberal.
Yeah, CNN at one time.
Yep, talks about the what he calls the brutal reality of the Democratic Party right now.
You played Jamie Raskin earlier. He represents, just outside of D.C., Montgomery County in Maryland. Fine. There's a lot of federal workers who live there. That's fine for him, although that chant probably needs work. But the average person who doesn't live in and around Washington has no idea what these things are and why you wouldn't want to cut some of the waste from them. And so, no, again, you and I have talked about this on air and off air, and I think it's really important because I think it's a fundamental fact of how Democrats are positioning themselves, whether intentionally or unintentionally. They just have a blind spot with Trump. No idea he proposes can be even a good idea. Again, if it was proposed by James P. Public, Republican president, they'd be like, okay, well, maybe. But because it is him and because the loathing is so, and it is, I use that word advisedly, but they hate him.
Right.
Every idea is a bad idea. And I just think it leads to some poor strategic conclusions if your goal is, as Democrats' goal should be, getting some power back. Because they're out of power at every single level, at the state and federal.
It's true. It is more than that, though, because a lot of the insanity of the Democrats came before Trump was even running for office.
Yeah, right.
So, but it is. I'm not saying the hatred isn't there. It is there, and it is true what he's saying.
Yeah.
Now, our audio cut of the day.
All right. What do you got?
This was just great. Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
White House Deputy Chief of Staff yesterday. This is just I'm just going to play it. This is just great.
All right.
The question comes up about Elon Musk not being an elected official. Okay. And this is the White House press briefing. So it's all the White House press. This is just great. Here we go.
It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, which is one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers of the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
I mean, that's just beautiful.
Oh, yeah. It makes you wonder, has Susie Wiles released the inner him? I mean, because he's not the same
he's not.
As he was years ago.
No.
I don't know if feels more to speak at liberty, or feels greater liberty, I guess, to speak his will. And if it was a very different administration the first time around. So maybe that was it. I don't know.
But he is laser focused on making sure that the argument is an all-encompassing jam and slam dunk where no one can argue with it.
Mm-hmm.
No one. Here he is, and you can tell he is trolling with substance.
Yeah.
I like that. Trolling with substance.
Mm-hmm.
You can't argue it. You can't look at that. Your argument is dead. That argument completely died yesterday. It's gone.
Yep.
Because Stephen Miller did it.
Yep.
Because of what he said there. Everything that he talked about is about the Democrats, what they claim they care about, democracy, but they really don't care about democracy. And so that was not that they weren't doing a good job at it, but putting him at the podium for the White House press briefing to articulate that. And I will tell you, because when I heard the reporter's question, I actually thought to myself, is that a setup easy softball for Stephen Miller? Because it was, I'm like, I knew exactly where he was going to go because he's been making that argument. But to do it where he did it in the setting, in the White House press briefing, and go after the media. And you know, how many times have you and I said this? You need to go after the media and tell them you're wrong. You're part of this problem. Here's the truth. You can't debate it. You know it's right. If you don't believe it's democracy that we're promoting, then you're the one that is ignorant of the Constitution.
Right.
You're the one that doesn't believe in democracy. And as we've always said, when you know you have 100% of the argument, then you throw it right back in their face.
Yep.
And that's what he did.
Yep. I love the approach, and I also love the attitude that he has. Let me give you a brief civics lesson. Because that's where we began, earlier in the show. It's like, wait a minute. It may be that a number of people in that room were learning their very first civics lesson. Do they even teach it anymore? And that's, I think, I appreciate that approach. And I don't know if Stephen Miller is, again, if there's been this awakening for him, or he feels, again, more at liberty to speak his mind, and everybody is on the same path right now. Whatever it is, keep it up.
He's really learned. He's really evolved.
Yeah, keep it up, for sure.
Oh, we got a great story next.
What do you got?
Just a great story.
All
Coming
right.
up next.
Okay.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Here it is. Two recently ousted members of the Squad will host a show on an independent news network started by former MSNBC anchor and pro-Hamas Mehdi Hassan. They announced on Thursday. Jamal Bowman, remember Fire Alarm Bowman? And Cori Bush, both of them who lost primaries, will host the Bowman and Bush show. They should call themselves the Odd Squad.
Yeah.
On Hassan's new network. I guess it's on YouTube or whatever.
Okay.
Zateo News, whatever. It's an independent news outlet.
All right.
But he's this pro-Hamas. So the beautiful thing is you now have officially a pro-Hamas network with those former Squad members and the former host of MSNBC who lost his Sunday night show back in 2023 and then left last year.
Yeah.
He's a nutcase. I mean, he really is. But I'm like, wow.
Yeah, good luck with that. It's
limited audience.
It will be a limited audience.
Limited audience.
I don't know, unless Red Eye Radio picks some audio up from it and, airs it.
Well, that's the beauty of it. The beauty of it. Some people might think, are you guys upset
No.
More audio for the show.
We wish Air America were still on.
We're hoping that all the Democrats and the Democrat donors were, in fact, I don't know if this is right or blasphemous, but we're praying that they start a network.
Right.
Because I don't know, we had a lot of fun during Air America playing their audio cuts.
We did. True story. If only their rehearsals had gone better.
We here at Red Eye Radio want all the radical left to speak as honestly as they can.
Yeah.
Don't try to hide it. Don't soft sell it.
Right.
Don't try to be Harris. Don't try to be Harris saying, I'll be tougher on the border than Trump, because nobody's going to buy it.
Nope.
Be honest.
Yeah.
Let us get inside the full insanity of your mind.
Yes. That's all we ask.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.